these are my disclosures. My study is titled Delphi-based survey for surgical indications in biopsy-proven active adult spinal tuberculosis. So although there is veritable amount of research on this topic, there is absence of any consensus studies or white papers or best practice guidelines. So we planned this study with a nationwide, to obtain a nationwide expert consensus on various dilemmas of surgical treatment of biopsy-proven active adult spinal tuberculosis patients. So this Delphi survey involved 4 stages. And the first stage was conducting an extensive literature review and formulation of a preliminary questionnaire. We reviewed almost more than 5,000 papers, and 298 were selected to formulate and identify gaps in the existing literature. So 20 key opinion leaders, spine experts across India were identified and selected. And based on the literature, we identified and formulated 46 questions which pertain to demographic data, clinical domain, radiological and serological domain of spinal tuberculosis. So this questionnaire was set out as a web-based survey to all ASSI members aged more than 40 and more than 10 years of experience. 70% consensus was considered as agreement. So the Delphi rounds were conducted, the 3 Delphi rounds were conducted, and first round had almost 46 questions which were answered, and 16 had more than 70% of consensus, of which 2 had 100% consensus. I'll be coming to the results later on. So second round had 58 responses and more than 6 questions had 100% consensus. So after the Delphi survey, a final set of recommendations was given out. So coming to the recommendations, the key recommendations in the clinical domain were progressive neurological deficit and correlating radiology, and neurological change appearing or deterioration while on ATT formed 100% indication for surgery. Isolated bladder bowel dysfunction associated with spinal TB lesions and complete neurodeficit of less than 3 months onset also formed indications. Pain not responding to medical management, myelopathic signs were also indications, and surgery can be started without prior ATT, and active pulmonary TB, drug-resistant TB or tubercular sacroiliitis would not constitute indications. So coming to the radiological domain, epidural abscess does not need decompression unless it is accompanied with simultaneous clinical and neurological findings. Paraspinal abscess, tubercular sacroiliitis are not indications for surgery. Hemoglobin, ESR, CRP had little contribution to surgical indications. Now coming to the key non-consensus areas, waiting period for discharging sinuses with drug therapy, nature of pain, drug resistance discharging sinus, night cries, night pain. There was no consensus with respect to surgery in these cases. In the radiological domain, number of vertebrae affected, degree of collapse, the amount of deformity, radiological worsening while being on effective ATT, debulking of infective load, there was no consensus with regarding to this. Also, there was disagreement regarding ESR, CRP being indications for surgery. So what is the value of this study? So it serves as a best practice guidelines to help surgeons treat these patients, and possibly the first nationwide study to obtain a consensus on various dilemmas of treatment of adult spinal TB patients. And the strengths of the study were that we had a creative online poll, and which included numerous surgeons across India and 20 spine experts across India who gave their opinions. So according to our knowledge, this is the first study across India to obtain a nationwide consensus on various indications of surgery while treating active adult spinal TB. And this study hopes to give a complete picture of surgical indications that form an unresolved concern in the management of spinal tuberculosis. So I thank members of ASSI who acted as key opinion leaders. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kushal. Now we'll call upon Dr. Aditya Agarwal to talk about comparative analysis of open fixation, decompression versus MIS fixation with tubular decompression in thoracolumbar spinal tuberculosis, a propensity matched multicenter study.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thoracolumbar spinal TB requires surgery for deformity correction, instability, and neurological compromise. There are very few comparative propensity score match studies which compare the two methods. Objective of our study was to compare clinical, functional, and radiological outcomes. It was a multi-center propensity match cohort study. It was conducted in 3 high-volume tertiary centers from 2018 to 2022. Inclusion criteria were 18 to 75 years, thoracolumbar tuberculosis, and more than 2 years of follow-up. Prior surgery at index, pyogenic infections, cervical or sacral, and multi-level non-contagious TB were excluded. These were the 2 surgical techniques, OFD and MIS. Propensity score matching was done. 15 covariates were identified like age, Asia grade, diabetes, ESR, CRP, affected vertebra collapse, and they were matched with 1:1 nearest neighbor with caliper of 0.2 standardized difference. After propensity score matching, as our love plot indicates that the standardized mean difference for most of the parameters came below the threshold of 0.1. There were initially 336 cases of 158 OFD and 178 MIS. After matching 100 pairs, these were the balanced covariates. The peri-operative outcome, OFD versus MIF, operative time, blood loss, and hospital stay was lower in MIS. And the VAS score and ODI scores were better in MIS at 3 months, with not significant at 2 years. Asia improvement was comparable. Correction achieved was more in open. There was more loss of correction in MIS, and fusion rates were comparable. Complications overall were more in OFD, more like deep infections, dural tears, implant failure, and MIS had more superficial infections, screw malposition. MIS in our study indicated lesser blood loss, shorter operative time, faster recovery, and OFD had advantages like better deformity correction and more durable alignment. Both had excellent fusion and neurological recovery. So our study indicates MIS could be preferred in early disease, mild deformity, and frail patients, whereas OFD in severe deformity, large abscesses, significant instability. Tailored approach is recommended. The strength is it was multi-centered, propensity scored matching to remove the bias, comprehensive outcomes, and limitations were retrospective 2 years follow-up only, and technique variations. Case 1 of MIS fixation, vestibular decompression with biopsy in a 32 years old female, D11 to 12 with MIS. Second case, 73 years old male with D8 tuberculosis with D7 to D9 fixation with biopsy. In a 51 years old female with D6 to D11 extensive Koch, fixation and open decompression was done. Another case of, and the last case, 51 years old male, D8 to D10. These are the 2 years of follow-up. Conclusion, MIS had a faster recovery, lower morbidity. OFD had superior deformity correction. Both had excellent fusion and neurological recovery, and we recommend individualized strategy. Thank you.
So open TLIF procedures have been the gold standard for treatment of spondylodiscitis, but have concerns regarding surgical site infection, sinus formation, progression and persistence of osteomyelitis, dead space formation, poor wound healing, and implant failure. Minimal invasive techniques by certain authors have shown promise in alleviating these concerns, but have shown selective indications so far. This was a single-center retrospective analysis of 52 cases with a minimum 2-year follow-up period. All cases of lumbar spondylodiscitis, either spontaneous or iatrogenic without prior implantation, and who failed conservative trial were included as a part of this study. The technique for this study included separate incisions for guide wire insertion with a midline incision for decompression. Unilateral or bilateral facetectomy was performed for debridement. Neural elements were protected, and debridement of the disc space was carried out. Either a bone graft or cage was used, and percutaneous pedicle screws placed via separate incisions. These were some of the clinical pictures showing wound healing. The hypothesis is separate incisions for screws and interbody placement helps compartmentalize the infection within these myofascial planes. So the aim was to assess effectiveness of control of infection, the complications associated with this procedure, and the clinical, radiological, and the hematological outcomes. This was a case of two-level spondylodiscitis, spontaneous, after a UTI, showing compartmentalization of the screws within myofascial planes and the midline incision being separate. The second case was a case of post-endoscopic discectomy, which suffered from an iatrogenic fungal spondylodiscitis, where an expandable cage was used for this. The cage showed mild subsidence, but went on to fuse. Third was post-epidural PRP injection. Patient had iatrogenic fungal spondylodiscitis, and again, a expandable cage was used. This case was post-COVID, spontaneous fungal spondylodiscitis of Candida species. In this case, bone graft was used instead of a cage, and adjacent level fixation was done due to the significant vertebral body destruction. The 6 months MRI is still showing implants within the myofascial compartments and a separate incision, separate window, decompression window. Post-laminectomy status L2 to L5 suffered from an L2-3 spondylodiscitis. We used a single-level TLIF procedure with the peak cage in this patient. In this case, the patient had collapse of the implants and cage subsidence at 1 month, but didn't have any clinical signs or symptoms. So he was kept under observation. At the end of 2 years, he showed complete fusion. There was one case of implant failure reported with inconclusive biopsy. A patient was kept on broad-spectrum antibiotics, but at the end of 3 months, the patient showed collapse of the implants, which required a revision, which was also performed through the same procedure, where percutaneous pedicle screws were placed 2 levels above and 2 levels below. This case showing a screw tract sinus on the left-sided screws, where the screws on the left side were infected and were withdrawn out, and showed complete resolution of the infection in the left-sided incision. There were 2 cases of central wound necrosis, out of which one is shown here. The central wound is showing a discharge, but the disc space was normal and there was no collection within, and the implants were safe in a different corridor. In the results, there was a male predominance with a mean age of 63.8. The fixation level was done at the adjacent level in 35% patients. The etiology was mainly spontaneous, but iatrogenic 56% and 44%. Pyogenic was seen in 52%, fungal was 13%, and inconclusive biopsy in 35% of the cases. There was significant improvement in pain and disability at the end of 2-year follow-up. There was only one patient who showed poor outcomes with Kirkcaldy-Willis functional outcome criteria, and 75% of the patients had recovered to Asia neurology by the end of the follow-up. There was only one patient who reported grade 3 fusion. Rest of all of the patients had grade 1 and 2 fusion. Complications, there were 4 patients who suffered complications, out of which 2 had midline wound necrosis, 1 had screw tract sinus, and 1 had implant failure requiring revision. In conclusion, this technique is effective in compartmentalizing the infection within the myofascial planes for effective control of infection. The screws inserted via the lateral incisions aid in reducing the dead space by pushing the muscle tissue towards the center, and it provides good functional radiological outcome while minimizing the complications. These are my references. Thank you.